Hey, friends. On today's episode of I Get To, I am so pleased to welcome back Elizabeth from Emotionally Healthy Legacy. It's kind of interesting. I say welcome back, but actually, this episode was recorded first. This is an episode that I pulled from the Meant to Bloom podcast archives. It was the first time I actually had Elizabeth on my podcast, but it's the second time she's appearing on I Get To. Anyway, this was such a good episode that I really wanted to make sure that it lived on in the podcast world. Um, but Elizabeth, she is from Emotionally Healthy Legacy. That's her own podcast. And she helps overwhelmed moms to reduce the mental stress so they can respond with patience and calm. And that is what this episode is all about. This one's about overcoming that mom anger that we get, how to respond to our kids when all we want to do is honestly slap them over the head. Like, it's normal to get mad at your kids. It is. And I know we all carry a lot of guilt over that, but the guilt's not going to fix anything. It's okay to get mad at your kids. It's just not okay to stay mad at them. It's not okay to act out of that anger. And this episode's going to help you learn how to emotionally regulate yourself in those stressful, chaotic moments and how to proactively take care of yourself so that you're not right there on that edge all day long, where it just takes a little poke to push you off. So please enjoy this episode. I really hope you learned something from this. Let me know what you learned from this episode. Send me an email, hello@brittanyclarkson.com. Get into my DMs over on Instagram at Britt Clarkson. That's Britt with one T. I would love to hear from you, but enjoy this episode. They keep telling us to enjoy it while they're young. But our days are filled with chaos and stress and cooking and endless laundry piles. Where's the time to enjoy anything? Yeah, that's what I always thought too. There's so much I have to do. When do I find time for peace and joy and happiness when I barely have time to sleep? Mama, it's time for a shift. You can be a happy mom. Yeah, it's possible. If I can, you can. Trust me. I've been a mess. I've been depressed. I've been overwhelmed. I've been to the bottom of the pits. And I've risen. I've grown. I've bloomed. And it all started when I realized I didn't have to anything. I get to. It is my privilege and my honor and my divine responsibility to be the queen of my home. It's not a burden. I'm not the janitor and the lunch lady. I'm in charge. I'm the ruler. I'm the chaos coordinator. I'm the calm in the storm. I don't have to anything. I get to. And so do you. So let's rise, mamas. Adjust your crown. Accept your responsibility. And change the effing world. It's all in the way you choose to see it. You're listening to I Get To, the podcast with Brittany Clarkson. That's me. Hi, Elizabeth. It's so good to have you here. Can I get you to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello. Hello, everybody. Usually moms probably listen to this episode. So hello, all the moms. So I am Elizabeth. I am a stress and emotion coach for moms. So I help stressed moms that are overwhelmed and they are just reacting all day long to their kids and just everything in life. And they just want to get out of that. And I help them learn ways to regulate their big and challenging emotions like the frustration and anger, irritation. So that's what I help moms with. I am a mom of four. I have three boys, 10, 7, and 4, and I have a baby girl who is 7 months old. So we do have a busy household. I'm also recently learned about myself, probably in the past year, that I am highly sensitive, and it just clicked and made sense why things were really overwhelming for me. Like if my schedule is like a lot going on or whatever, like I can't do chaos. We talked a little bit earlier before that you said you work better when like there's stuff going on behind you and like the noise. I can't do that. I'm different, and so I learned that about myself, and just like learning ways I can support myself. But yeah, I've been married for almost 13 years. We live in Minnesota, and I grew up in a big family. I had 5 siblings. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And I love to support and help moms that are struggling with overwhelm and burnout and just feel like they lost themselves.
Oh, that is so awesome. I love hearing about like your heart for women and all that. Um, okay, let's go ahead and jump into what we're here to talk about today. Talking about a lot of our mom anger and how to regulate ourselves around our kids.
Hmm.
Um, so let's go ahead. I don't know if there's somewhere you prefer to start with this.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about my story and my background,
Yeah.
how I even like got into this. So a few years back, my youngest boy he's always been like that since he was born, but he was just one of those like fireballs. He would always like get into stuff. I always had to be like on guard watching him. Like, where is he now? What is he getting into? And it was like really draining me. And so one of my friends suggested for me to go through therapy to figure out like ways that I can parent him. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, I got 2 older kids. I'm like, I should have this thing down, right? And then I decided to still go to therapy, and I was introduced to a whole new world of gentle parenting and like meeting your kids' emotional needs and empathizing with them, respectful parenting kind of. Maybe some moms that are listening to this, they are on that journey as well. And when I started, I'm like, it was very new to me, and I'm like, I was really open to it, and it really felt right for me because I grew up in like traditional parenting where like there was threatening and
Mhm.
spanking and lots of control. Like the idea was the more you can control your child, the better of a parent you are. So that's kind of like the background. Even though it was a loving home, that's just the main parenting it was. And so I started to switch my approach, and I really struggled a lot in the beginning. I felt like I was really failing. I kept going back to like automatic ways that I've been doing for years, like raising my voice and threatening to get control back, trying to control my child and make them do what I, asked them to do. And even like spanking, because that was the main way I was disciplined. And that's the main way we were disciplining our kids before all this. And so I felt like I was failing more at this gentle parenting approach than I wanted to. A few months into therapy, I bought the course Unburdened by Ali Casaza, and in there, she talked about having like a morning routine that kind of supports you and centers you, something that and she mentioned the book The Morning Miracles, and I read that book, and it talked about like affirmations and visualization and like deep breathing and meditation. And I just kind of like, I'm like, okay, I want to do this. This seems like it will help me with my day, right? And so I started to get up before my kids, since all my kids slept through the night, and I started implementing some of those strategies, and I noticed a significant difference in how I felt internally and how I was able to respond to my kids. Like my tolerance level to like the chaos and overwhelm and like the stressful situations was way higher. So that kind of brought me to the idea of like stress management for moms, because I noticed that a lot of moms in my circle, we were taught like, oh, well, be patient. If you're a Christian, you need to be patient. And nobody was really taught how. It's like,
No.
well, how? Like, I'm having a hard day. How do I be patient? I keep finding myself being snappy and agitated and frustrated. So I started to figure out ways that were helpful to me to calm my body when I'm frustrated, when I'm angry, and ways that I could like snap less and be frustrated less. And that put me on a journey to help other moms.
Awesome. I find this so incredibly relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, having 3 boys, you know, I, yeah, they get crazy, and they all need parented so differently, and then to be like raised in a way where like, if you weren't listening, you were made to respect your parents because otherwise, you had to.
Yeah, respect was
And
demanded,
then,
it was not modeled.
yeah, yeah. And then to like be all like, okay, well, everyone now is talking about gentle parenting. We understand like children are humans. They need a lot of help figuring out how to be a human being. But like we're grown adults. It's like no one taught me how to be a human being, and I'm 30, and how am I supposed to teach this child?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and we find ourselves struggling with the same exact thing.
yeah. I actually just put my oldest, he just started like play therapy.
Mhm.
So like he's going in and we're kind of trying to figure out how his brain works, kind of, because I can't like relate to him. Like in a lot of ways I relate to him, but in a lot of ways I'm like, I can't get through to you, and I don't understand how to make you like understand what I'm asking you to do and the importance of you doing it.
Mhm.
And I came to the conclusion, I was like, I am not a child development professional. Like, and here I am in charge of a child's development.
Mhm.
So I feel like I talk to someone who went to school instead of just Googling things over and over again. Um, so it's really neat to like, he loves going because he gets to just play the whole time. And
Mm.
I like going because I get to talk to an adult who's like, let's help figure out what's going on with your kid. And I will give you some practical, like, this is
Some
psychologically
tools.
the right way to handle this.
Yeah, it's so nice. Like, I think in that time that we live in, there's so much more support available and help
Yeah.
available. Because I think I have one of my boys who's super highly sensitive, and I also feel like he might have ADHD.
Hmm.
With some of the things that I've been learning, because I've listened to several podcasts about it, and I'm like 90% of what they're talking about is this child, and like learning ways instead of making him feel worse about what's going on, but like finding strategies and tools to like support him, giving him tools like this is like yeah, you're struggling, you're overwhelmed, so let's figure out ways that I can help you and come alongside you versus just like spank it out of them, because that's how
Hmm.
I was raised. Like, you're being defiant, so let's just force it and spank it out of you. So
Right.
like, yeah, I feel like now is such a better time in that. Like, there's so much more support available. It's so much hopeful, I think.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Um,
All right, so let's get into the nitty
yeah.
gritty.
Yeah. Let's get into how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe we can start talking the difference between responding and reacting, um, and how to self-regulate with that.
Okay. So I would say like reacting is just it's an automatic reaction. Like you don't even think about it. Like for example, if um somebody like comes up to you and just smacks you in the back of the head, and you just like smack them back, you don't even think about it, it's just an
Mhm.
automatic reaction, it just happens, you're just like literally protecting yourself. That would be kind of reacting. Or if, let's say, we were raised in a family where yelling was normal, that's all we know, and that's how we feel like we can get control back. If our child is not listening and not doing what we want, we like yell automatically. That's kind of like an automatic reaction, and those are kind of ingrained patterns in our brain that happen over the years, and you don't even have to think about it, it just happens. Responding is something more intentional. It's like you choose to pretty much go against your automatic reactions to respond more in a positive way. So, for example, if your automatic reaction is raising your voice and yelling to get control back, like that's my tendency. Responding would be coming up with a plan ahead of time. What am I going to do instead? When I feel out of control, then I will blink. I will handle the situation differently. Like, I will remind myself, I got this. I can handle this. I'll take a few deep breaths and I will tell myself, like, I have a good kid who's having a hard time, and like I'll come alongside that way versus just like raising my voice. Or if my kid is not doing something I want them to do and they're just resisting, let's say reacting would be like threatening them. Responding would be like, Do you want to do this on your own, or do you want mom to help you? Like, you're still guiding them in the right direction, but like you're handling it more from like feeling grounded versus like agitation, frustration, and just like blah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So going more against like your natural instincts.
Yeah, it really
Um,
is. Like, a lot of, at least for me, I have found that reacting is typically like stuff you don't think about. It just like comes out, and typically it's negative. And
mhm.
responding is like something that it's a positive way of handling a similar situation, a mature, more like wise and respectful way of handling the same circumstance.
All right. So how do we shift from reacting into responding?
So for me, the biggest thing is like recognizing, being, first of all, being aware, like what situations are triggering for you and that you find yourself reacting in ways you wish you didn't. Is it raising your voice, right?
Mhm.
That you, like when you're running late, you just get all frustrated, you start raising your voice. It could be that. Like it could be that threatening, could be like reacting. So it's like being aware of like what is triggering for me, what's making me more agitated and frustrated. Like if I like, sometimes it's like unmet needs. If you're running an empty, if you haven't had enough sleep, if you are hungry, your brain is going to shift to emotional part of the brain, and it's going to be more reactive. That's just natural. It's going to be hard for it to respond because your logical problem solving part of the brain shuts off when you are triggered. So one of the things that is super helpful for me, I have found, is that having, like, proactively meeting my needs that I know if they're not met, I get more triggered. For example, like if I go to sleep late at night because I scroll through my phone, and I go to sleep at midnight and I am sleep deprived the next morning, I find myself more reactive, right? Like when I don't get enough sleep, I'm more reactive. And if I skip meals, like when my body is hungry, like my brain is focused on the fact that I'm hungry. It's not focused on how to respond positively in the situation. So that's like another proactive thing that you can do ahead of time to support yourself. And then, like, for me, another thing is being highly sensitive. I have to have daily time alone to recharge and center myself. When I do that, my brain is like more calm and grounded, and I'm able to respond more positively. And the last thing is, I would say, coming up with a plan. What are you going to do instead? So we're like, oh, I don't want to yell. Well, okay, great. What are you going to do differently? Right? Like in the heat of the moment, you feel out of control. What are you going to do differently? Like, for example, let's say if a child disrespects you, and your automatic reaction would be like, what did you just say that? Like, who are you to talk to me like that? Or like kind of like a negative reaction. Okay, well, you don't want to do that. So what are you going to do differently? You have to have a plan ahead of time that's gonna, what you're gonna do differently. For example, I learned this from a parenting psychologist, Rachel Bailey, but she calls it a when then statement. So, like, next time when I feel disrespected by my child, then I will blank. Like, what are you exactly going to do differently? Like, when next time when I feel disrespected by my child, then I will take a deep breath and tell my child, I don't let people talk to me like that. If you need to talk to me, it needs to be respectful, and I'll be in the next room, like, ready whenever you're ready. So like you're setting a boundary, and it's not that like you're being rude or anything, you just don't tolerate that. Or like, next time I feel the frustration build up and I want to yell, then I will take some deep breaths and remind myself, I am safe, I got this, I can handle this. Or I will walk away. Like maybe it could be walk away, and I will visualize a calm place, whatever it is to kind of calm your brain, your mind, your nervous system. So I think having like an action plan is super, super important versus just like saying, oh, I'm not going to yell anymore. Well, what are you going to do instead? And the next time, like, something happens that is super triggering for you, right?
Absolutely. Gosh, I'm just thinking of like the whole pink elephant thing right now. That, you forget to apply it to a lot of things where someone says, don't think of a pink elephant. All you can do
Mm-hmm.
is think of a pink elephant. When you're telling yourself, don't yell, don't yell, don't yell, you're just bringing on that energy of yell.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
You-
So like I think like focusing on what you're gonna do instead is super, super helpful. Like at least I have found that being super transformative for me. And the biggest thing is doing things proactively to reduce your triggers to begin with. Because it's really hard in the heat of the moment when things start getting really overwhelming and just chaotic and stressful. Um, it's really hard if you're just like in burnout mode all the time. Like you have to do things proactively that will support you, because what happens is when your brain is under stress, when you are overwhelmed, when you are triggered, your thinking brain that helps you make positive logical um, choices in the moment, that helps you respond, it literally shuts off and you're shifted to the emotional part of the brain. And that's why you find yourself reacting in ways that you regret later. And you're like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I feel like I couldn't even stop myself in that moment. It felt so hard. That's because literally your thinking brain that helps you make positive choices is shut off. So, if you do things proactively that support you and ground you and meet your needs, your brain is a lot more likely to stay in that thinking brain and get triggered less often. Does that make sense?
Yes. Um, Absolutely. Yes. We have to be proactive about taking care of ourselves. And I think a lot of times we forget how simple and like it's just absolutely simple that can be because we get in our heads about all of the like self-care needs to be super like specific to you. Where sometimes you need to step back and not go into this like I need to do something for myself, as in, something special for you. It can be your basic human needs of, getting enough sleep, eating nutritious meals, drinking your water, like
Mm-hmm.
just the basic, like how to be human
Yeah.
staples that keep you alive. And we're
Mm-hmm.
depriving ourselves of these and wondering like why we can't emotionally hold it together.
Yeah. And so, like, one of the things is I remember hearing this years ago, and like I use this phrase. It's like sometimes it's not a spiritual problem. Sometimes you just need some sleep. Sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad mom. I'm a bad Christian. I keep like not being patient. Well, guess what? If you are seriously sleep deprived because you have a newborn, sometimes it's not a spiritual problem at all. Sometimes you
Right.
freaking just need some sleep and a meal to eat, and you'll be like a whole new person, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, one of the things that a friend of mine who is an energy coach for moms, she said that, like, and it totally makes sense. It takes energy out of your brain to emotionally regulate. So, if you're physically exhausted and you're sleep deprived, your brain literally does not have the energy to emotionally regulate. It takes a lot to stay calm when your toddler's throwing a tantrum and not get sucked into that like energy. It takes a lot. So just like kind of keep that in mind. When your basic needs are not met, it's going to be really like you're going against everything, and it's going to be so much harder to stay more calm and grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so you talked a lot about like how you recenter. Um,
Mhm.
what are some of the practical ways that you would recommend that you like to go to for your recentering?
Yeah. So yeah, like for example, let's say I'm doing homework with my son and he's just not cooperating, he's having a hard time, he's getting really frustrated, and I'm getting frustrated, and I just feel like that frustration and agitation build up, and I feel like I just want to yell and scream. So first is being like aware, like what's happening. Like I've noticed the tension and that frustration build up. And so my plan is like I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a moment instead of having a moment. So my plan is to communicate that I need a break. and I need to remove myself from the stressful situations. Here's the thing. If you continue to stay in the stressful situation, your thinking brain that helps you make positive choices shuts off, okay? You're going to continue to stay in your emotional part of the brain, and you're going to end up saying hurtful things or doing hurtful things. And so, like, physically removing yourself from a stressful situation, obviously not always possible, but as much as you can, if your kids are physically safe, communicate like, hey, mama needs a 5-10 minute break. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go to my room. So I need to calm my body down because I feel upset or I feel angry, whatever it might be. And so when I go to my room, my natural tendency is to want to grab my phone and scroll through my phone through like either Instagram or some sort of social media. That's my natural tendency. Though if I do that, I do not feel better. It just kind of like helps me, I guess, what's that word?
Distracts
Escape
you.
distract me from reality. It doesn't actually calm my nervous system down.
Mm-hmm.
So my tendency is to grab my phone and just like scroll through stuff to just kind of escape the reality of the uncomfortable feeling of frustration or like anger even with my kids. And so I have been teaching myself to handle those situations differently. And I have a plan, again, kind of like, what am I going to do when I feel frustration? And that is, one of them is deep breathing. So deep breathing is really helpful because it actually calms your body down. So just taking a deep breath through your nose and out through your mouth. So deep breathing is that's my number one, is deep breathing, because you can do it anywhere. You don't have to isolate, not necessarily isolate. You don't have to remove yourself from a situation. Deep breathing is really helpful to just slow the reaction time. It just sends oxygen back to your thinking brain, which is your logical, problem solving, positive choice making part of the brain. So deep breathing. The other thing is that like I'll close my eyes, I'll lay down on my bed, or I'll just close my ears to just remove some of that stimulation or any sort of noise, like being highly sensitive. That's what I need. And I will take some deep breaths. And for me, I visualize myself in a calm place. That is what helps me calm my nervous system down. Some people need like a shower or like wash their face with cold water or something sensory. But for me, it is visualizing a calm and peaceful place. I think of myself being on the beach. Like I will describe it in my head. The sand is super soft and like white, and the water is clear and turns into turquoise, and like I feel the breeze, and like I literally imagine myself being in a very calm and peaceful place that really calms my body down. And I will say things like breathe in calm, breathe out stress. And as I'm doing that, I will relax my whole like body. I'll try to get all that tension out by like breathe in peace, breathe out tension. And sometimes it takes me like 5 minutes, sometimes a little bit more depending on the situation. Sometimes it's like a minute or two, and like I'm able to like really calm my body down to like feel much better and go back into the situation with my kids and not be as triggered. Sometimes if my husband is home, and I will tell him like, I need 15 minutes. I just need to reset. Like, please take over with the kids. I feel really overwhelmed, and I just need to kind of center myself and ground myself. Like I have to leave the phone in a different place just because I'm so tempted to just scroll. Sometimes if my phone is nearby, I'll turn on some like meditation music or something that is like really, really calming. And that also can be really, really like helpful. But deep breathing, visualizing, like breathe in peace, breathe out tension, and like saying a mantra. I know that is something like saying an affirmation. You talk about that. I talk about that a lot. If you tell yourself, I'm not patient, I'm just not a patient mom. Oh my gosh. Like I'm always so frustrated. You're going to live that out. Like, oh, I'm just going to lose it. Oh, I can't handle this. Like you are going to live that out. You're like, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like you're going to act on it versus like, this is hard. This is overwhelming and I can handle this. One of my favorites is, this is what it is right now. I don't like it and I'll get through it. Like, you're acknowledging the reality. You're not denying that this is hard. Like,
Mhm.
parenting is hard and I can handle this and I can do it. If you are a Christian, sometimes you can say a prayer to God and ask him for like help and support. That is also like really helpful to kind of like recenter yourself. I know I'm just kind of throwing out like a lot of ideas
Oh,
because
yeah.
everybody's a little bit different, but you guys can like choose what you think, will be helpful and just try it out, see if it helps. Though I do say it does take practice. It does take practice to implement these things. It doesn't happen
Mhm.
overnight. You're literally going years and years against like ingrained patterns of automatic reactions. So in the beginning, you will find yourself going back to your old patterns more. I just think having a plan, like next time I get overwhelmed and I want to yell, then I will remove myself from the situation if possible, take some deep breaths, and like visualize a calm place, whatever it might be for you, to just like calm your body down.
Well, that is a lot of really great information and a lot of really great like tips and all of this. So maybe you can tell my listeners where to find more of you and what you have specially to offer for them.
Yeah, so I do hang out mostly on Instagram. I show up there almost every single day. I am under Emotionally Healthy Legacy. I also do have a podcast as well. Same thing, same name, Emotionally Healthy Legacy. You can find it on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iTunes. And my gift for you, I have two things. I have a 5-day mini course where you can sign up for, and you get like 5 days worth of tips and tricks of like how to calm your nervous system down and be more calm and grounded and centered so you're less reactive. And then the other thing is, I offer like a free stress management call. So if you feel like this spoke to you, if you find yourself like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm reacting to my day all the time, I feel so burned out, I feel so overwhelmed and stressed, and I just need someone to help me figure out, just shift things a little bit. I offer free stress management calls. So we're going to link that below, and you can just click on there and book a time. And if that time doesn't work, you can contact me and we will figure out a time that does.
That is so awesome. I think every mom needs some stress management in their lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't
And
think of one that doesn't.
yeah, and I think the last thing I want you to walk away with, to remember, like if you snapped at your kids, if you yelled, if you lost your cool, it's not because you're a bad mom, it's because you were struggling. You were internally struggling. Things were either too overwhelming or too triggering, too much stimulation. There was so much going through your mind. Whatever it was, it's not because you're a bad mom. It's just because you're struggling and you need a little bit of extra support. So when that mom guilt creeps in at the end of the day, here's a phrase I want you to remember. I'm a good mom who had a hard day. I'm a good mom who had a hard day. So that's going to help some of that guilt push it out. It helps me a lot.
I love that. I'm a good mom who had a bad day. Baby. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. This is all some really great stuff to think on, and I look forward to listening to everything you just said to me over again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of I Get To. It really does mean the world to me to have you here. But are you ready to take this a step farther? Check the description below this episode and grab the Happy Mom Mindset mini guide. It's totally free to you, and it's not just for moms, by the way. Then hop onto Instagram, let me know what you thought about this episode. Share your screenshot, tag me, Britt Clarkson. And if any part of this has resonated with you, I so appreciate if you'd leave me a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. It really is just the only way podcasts get seen. And then share this on social, text it to your bestie. You're part of a movement now. We're here to change the minds of moms everywhere. It doesn't have to be just this hard, hot mess thing anymore. We get to enjoy our lives, guys. Let's go.